couple of snags trying to set this up, and you know, I was pretty close to postponing it one more time because I injured my back.
Oh.
Yeah. So like, I don't know. I got a feeling that at least for the beginning of this conversation, like the whole sort of like physical health is probably going to be
The subject.
like the focal point, because
Mm-hmm.
like I really wanted to ask you about it. I haven't really heard like your story fully. Like you let me in on like the important details from the beginning, but like I don't know how it happened and like how severe it is, and like it's been a while already. It's been what, 4 weeks or something since we talked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so like I'd like to hear where you're at with your whole situation. Like, can you walk, and like are you always in pain? Do you feel like any sort of like change, or like what's the situation on your end?
It's been 6 weeks since the actual injury. Or so 6 weeks. No, sorry, 6 weeks off work now. And
Oh.
then the actual injury, that it probably happened in 6-7 months ago.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, how it happened, or how you get that moment where you feel something's. I felt this moment where something's damaged here. Not just like you bump
Yeah.
yourself, you're like, oh, that's a bit serious. But then I just kept going on with things for 7 months
Hmm.
till now. But yeah, so I was wearing a frog jumpsuit, this beautiful lycra light green jumpsuit, dressed as a frog, had this amazing
Uh-huh.
frog hat. So when you're dressed as a frog at a kindergarten, children tend to want to chase you around. So we played
Yes.
chase the frog with about, I don't know, 12 5-year-olds around the kindergarten, around the forest. I was trying to get away, hopping away
Mhm.
like a frog. They were trying to jump on me, and I chose a poor escape route, which was jumping into a hammock.
Oh yeah.
And 12 children bundled on top of the hammock. Hammock breaks, and I landed on my back
Oh
onto
no.
the ground. And that was that moment where I'm covered in children, da da da, and then everyone's laughing, good times. But then I get up, and there's like, oh, something's, that's pretty sore. And
Yeah,
then,
yeah,
but
yeah.
then I just kind of got on with my day and my life. I didn't take any time off. I just,
Hmm.
I saw back, it will fix itself. The lesson I've learned since is, well, many lessons not to ignore that. But then 6 months later, I don't know. I guess that kept working, and it never really healed. Only probably got worse and worse.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, suddenly it was almost like a sudden just rush of pain, just kicked my ass and made me like, okay, you have to stop moving now. You have to stop working. It wasn't like
Yeah.
from the injury, steady pain all the way. It was just like injury, and then it kind of went away. I forgot about it, and then all of a sudden, wham, got hit with this pain, and
Uh-huh.
yeah, had to. I was like ringing in work. Oh, maybe I need to take some easier shifts, or I wasn't convinced something was serious until very quickly, like a couple of days after that moment of pain, when things only got worse and worse. So that's how it happened, and turned out to be herniated disc, as you know. Uh, Went
Uh-huh.
for all kinds of scans, X-ray, MRI. MRI picked up that hernia from the frog,
Hmm.
and another hernia from 5 years before that I didn't even know I had.
Oh wow.
Uh, so that was, you think, oh, I've got one hernia, but okay, maybe we can fix this. And then another one, which is higher up the back. So the frog one is like down in my ass. It's near my coccyx, right at
Yeah,
the bottom
the
here.
L4, L5, or L5S1, something like that.
Quite a common place, so I'm told.
Yeah. The
Sitting
classic.
sitting down on your ass doesn't help.
Uh-huh.
Falling out of hammocks doesn't help. Uh, but the other one's a higher up one. Uh, I don't know. It's not. It's sort of mid back,
Yeah.
and that's an old one. And the doctor was sort of trying to work out where it came from. Had no trauma. tells me that it's probably from sitting down, and I had a sitting down job for
Yeah.
8 years. So that's the only reason I could think. I don't play sports, don't
Like
ski,
the
don't do that.
instrument making job.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I
Like I
was,
would assume that if it's in the middle of the spine, that it's sort of like a hunched over sort of position.
I think you're right. I can only be that. As if I'm sitting down now trying to imagine it, it seems like it would be a bad posture issue. Just slouching in your abdomen, and letting your sort of spine crumple, and it sort of goes
Mm-hmm.
forward like this for me as my
Yeah.
belly goes out and shoulders go back. So yeah, about 8 years of that caused a compression and a hernia up there, which isn't causing me pain. Didn't even know I had it. But I'm told that as I get older, the space between the discs gets smaller, and then it's gonna cause me some pretty big
Mm.
problems. But the one on the
Yeah.
bottom, for now, the recent one has, I don't know, it's in a strange place with it. I'm going back to work on Monday. It feels like it's healed. I've got a lot of mobility back, no nerve pain, no sciatic nerve pain down the leg, which is
Oh,
amazing.
nice.
It's the best not to have that.
Mm-hmm.
And just the occasional kind of localized pain in that area if I do the wrong thing. Like now, if
Yeah.
I'm sitting down and my body doesn't agree with sitting down anymore. So I feel that little niggle there, like just reminding me we're not healed,
Yeah.
but I can walk. And I don't know. Did you have that sciatic pain, and where are you at now?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. When I got my herniated disc around 3 years ago, it was the same thing like you said.
Mm.
Like I'm pretty sure the initial sort of like injury that caused it was around 6 months before I had it diagnosed.
Right.
And like you do sort of like remember that something happened that was an unusual like physical trauma,
Mm.
but it just like you don't it doesn't hurt in the way that then 6 months later something sort of like just like tips over and like it becomes like unspeakable pain sort of like from one day to the other. And it's like I remember I thought it was a trapped nerve because it seemed like it came out of nowhere, so
Mm.
it would just be like a little thing that like just got itself trapped, and like I would just need that release, and then everything would be back to normal. And one of the symptoms that I felt first was that like sciatic nerve sort of like tingling down my leg.
Mm-hmm.
um and like without being an expert on it, but just being somewhat experienced with it at this point, I think like it has to do with like the side effects, right? Like the actual herniated disc is not really what like what causes a lot of discomfort. Like if you imagine that that's sort of like a membrane that the disc sits in, it ruptures, and
Mm-hmm.
then the disc can start to like push out through that rupture, and that's the herniation, right?
Mm.
Like initially when you get that the initial injury, that's just the rupture, that's not when the herniation actually sort of like happens. But then gradually, as you continue with like not taking care of it, you like increase that herniation more and more.
Yeah.
And then at some point you get like I assume that you get sort of like you get inflammation that makes the tissue swell up, and then the swelling causes this pressure on your nerves, and for instance the sciatic nerve which runs down like in that same area. Like that's how you get those like you get those side effects, right? And then like the slight discomfort makes you compensate,
Mm-hmm.
and then over like a longer period of time, when you keep compensating, you just like your body starts to like really tense up, and like the muscles in the whole like greater area around that injury just get like completely locked at some point. And that's certainly what happened to me the first time 3 years ago. And now 3 months ago something similar happened. I wasn't quite sure how it came about. um but I woke up one day and just felt incredibly tense in my lower back, and that tension just like grew to the point that like it was hard for me to walk without severe pain.
Mm-hmm.
Just like any kind of movement, and especially sort of like spontaneous movement, would be like very very painful. And then I did some exercises, and I saw a specialist. Do you call it an osteopath in English?
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, yeah. So like I saw an osteopath, and he sort of like cracked my spine a couple of times, and it
All right.
uh, it went away pretty quickly actually, and I felt nothing of it for the last 3 months. And then on Sunday I went for a walk because of the spring weather and everything. It was a good, nice long walk. I came back home and I felt very sort of like tense in my lower back. So I did a little bit of stretching, and with that stretching, I felt more pain that I have like than I otherwise would.
Mm.
Um, and then it basically just like it got worse over the night. When I woke up in the morning, I was in more pain than when I went to bed, and I decided to go to work anyway. I didn't think it was a big deal, but while I was at university, I just like it got so bad that I eventually almost couldn't walk at all, and I actually had to call my girlfriend and ask her to pick me up because I wouldn't be able to do the 15-minute walk home.
Mm-hmm.
um so yeah, like like it's really scary how it escalates from being just mild discomfort to severe discomfort to like crippling agony.
Yeah. I wonder if this
And
is your old injury come back, you know?
I'm quite sure that it's related to it. I can't imagine it wouldn't be. But it does feel somewhat different. And it feels like because this is like that compensation, I can see when I look at my spine. Um, I even took some pictures of myself in the mirror just to remind myself like I wasn't able to stand up straight. Like there was a very clear sort of like sideways, like an S shape down my spine, basically like around my hip area. And it's still not perfect. I was just out for a little walk. We just went and did some grocery shopping. Um, and it was possible for me to walk there without being in pain, but still, I like it's very tense in the muscles around my sort of like hip area.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's just like it's very clear for me that there's such a strong association between physical pain and like fear,
Yeah.
like that your emotional reaction to the uncertainty of this situation is like such a big contributing factor to how the overall situation like feels. And like I think when I was younger I would have like I had heard about that sort of like you know like composite effect of like fear and pain, and I would imagine that it would be a more sort of like abstract or like I don't know esoteric combination. I don't know, like, but like actually experiencing it is like it's so real. Like it is actually like the pain actually feels like several times worse when you don't understand the pain, when you don't know the pain. As soon as it becomes familiar and you know the way forward,
Mm-hmm.
it's so much easier to live in that same state.
Yeah.
It's and like I would assume that that was like that sounds familiar for you, having like just experienced that for the first time now a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. It's like I'm trying to keep in my mind this experience because um, it's incredibly humbling, of course, to get to just be stopped by your body, to be stopped by pain, to be stopped by some injury, and yeah, I want to kind of hold on to that feeling of humility, fragility, and facing that the journey of pain. Like, yes, you got injured, and then my reaction, like it always is when I have an injury in the past, is I'll just take it a bit easy, but I'll keep going. sort of keep working, and
Mm-hmm.
then and what was I thinking? Yeah, and then my body just wouldn't let me do that, and that's when the fear
Yeah.
came in. For the first time, like body wins over mind. I can't go and do what I want, and
Yeah.
then the pain was just, it's all consuming. And like I had the sciatic nerve pain, and it was just like lightning fire down my leg. could,
Yeah.
couldn't walk, and then the back is also just, yeah, as you say, like tensed up. So I was completely immobile first time, and and then there's that time of fear, as you say, it comes straight after that, like, oh, I can't walk. And
Yeah.
then, of course, you don't know how long that's going to be for, and part of your mind is going, is this how everything is forever?
Yes.
And then the other part of the mind is trying to adjust to this. Okay, how am I going to live if this is forever now? And then also, I've never experienced pain like this. I have no idea how to deal with that much pain.
Yeah.
And then, so you're locked in this fear and pain. And then the temptation is to like fix it as quick as possible. What can I do? And then the temptation is to go on Google, and I want to learn what this is. And so I'm trying to
Yeah.
diagnose myself while I'm waiting for the doctor.
Oh no.
And then you get 500 things of what it could be, and
Yeah.
I'm like picking the things I want it to be, and the things I don't, I'm like, I don't want it to be a hernia. I really don't want it to be a hernia. I want it to be like this muscle contraction, because if it's a
Yeah. Yeah.
muscle,
Yeah.
I can that calms me down to imagine. I know how a muscle, I can relate to a muscle, and I just need to
Yeah.
relax it. And
Yes.
something in my bones, it was like, I can't fix that with myself. And that was the feeling that this took. Oh, I need someone to firstly tell me what it is, and then tell me how to fix it, or maybe even, go inside my body and just fix the problem. And that's a scary
Yeah.
thing in itself. Surgery is scary in itself, but just having no autonomy over your own recovery was,
Yeah. No,
whoa,
absolutely.
yeah.
And like I did the same thing when like I went to a neurologist, and they tapped me on the knees with a hammer, and like
Mm-hmm.
did the whole sort of like routine check thing, and they said it could either be a trapped nerve or a herniated disc, and that I should go and get an MRI scan in order to determine which one it was. And I just left her office telling myself, "Oh, let's say it's a trapped nerve." Like I actually went for the next, like, I think month or two, actively pursuing the treatment that would be required for a trapped nerve,
Right.
and it didn't go away. And only like as it kept getting worse, I had to come to this like uncomfortable realization that reality is actually a real thing, and it's not just like a narrative that I decide. And I had to go and like bend my head and just get the MRI scan and get the diagnosis that I knew was coming. It was a herniated disc, and it was pretty severe at this point. But still, they didn't suggest surgery. I
Yeah.
think it's extremely rare with people sort of like our age, when you get a slip disc, that they will recommend surgery,
Mm-hmm.
especially as a first option. I don't really think that happens. Maybe if you're much older, and like exercises might seem like more of an arduous task. Like, yeah, okay, I like that could be, but I think like exercise is a very common um like way to go, at least as the first attempt. And of course, because it's like risk free.
Mm-hmm.
I think most people would want to try exercises before they tried surgery anyway.
Depends on your pain,
Um,
though. I think they offer, that's the scary thing as well, like exercise first, but yes, and then I'm in this state now, like, will it work? Can I go back
yeah,
to work? Well, because if the exercises don't work, then you've no other option, because it's either two options: live with the pain,
yeah,
or go in and try and remove the issue. and
yeah.
and, and yeah, living with the pain is like, well, that's not an option. So that,
I mean, I will say, when they told me I should get some massage and do physical exercises like on the floor,
mhm.
I was pretty disappointed. Like I must admit, I was in so much pain.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted it to go away immediately. I was hoping that they would just recommend surgery and I would have taken it in a heartbeat. Just,
Yeah.
you know, put me under, cut me open, fix me up.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll pay what it costs. I'll run the risk that's inherent to surgery, but I wanted the pain to go away so fast. But I think like looking back on it, like you said about it being a humbling experience, like I think that's very true. And I think like there is something to gain from like acquiring this perspective, right? Like when you said, is it going to be forever, right? is this
Mm-hmm.
is this what it is now? That's the immediate thought that hits you, right? And like I'm immediately reminded of a friend of mine who broke his back in high school and he lost the ability to walk. So he's been in a wheelchair since second year of high school.
Wow. Wow.
And like I always like thought I understood like the gravity of the situation for him, right? I was always aware on a sort of cognitive level yet that yes, he will never walk again. Um, but being in a situation where I had to sort of like, acknowledge my own mortality and like, face that potential that, you know, we are pretty fragile flesh robots, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take a whole lot to fundamentally mess with our functionality.
Mm-hmm.
And just like a little bit of, like spinal issues can lead to not being able to walk essentially like ever again.
Mm-hmm.
And like just like the fear of having to confront that sort of major life change like was humbling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like the realization that that paralysis or like loss of mobility does not mean like it's not a numb experience. It doesn't come without discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
And like I spent some time with this guy over summer when I was in Denmark, and he told me how he's had to put his studies on hold because the discomfort is too much for him. He can't sleep properly at night. Like he we're like yeah, he got paralyzed in like the second year of high school, so we're coming up on like half his life at this point that he's been paralyzed, right? And it's still like pain. It's still like discomfort on a very daily basis. So like I wasn't looking into this sort of, oh, maybe like I won't be able to walk and then I'll still live the same life but without legs. It's very much, like the potential that you're gonna have to try to, live the rest of your terribly long life with like constant pain. And I'd never really thought about that. And I think that's a thing, maybe I'm just speaking as as an uninformed like child here, but like that feeling of being immortal is something like I don't think anybody will say that on a cognitive level we believe we're immortal, but we just haven't been confronted with our mortality in a way that really sort of like knocks us on our asses. And
Exactly.
I think it's a healthy thing to just, get knocked on your ass and like yeah, get a slightly different perspective on things.
It is really hard to recognize your fragility when you're well, and
Yes.
I mean, the closest I ever came to it, fortunately for me, I never got a serious injury before. But what would remind me of my mortality is when I had the flu or something like this.
Mhm.
When you're so ill for like, but it's only a week or 2 weeks or something, but right in the depths of flu, and I couldn't remember what it feels like to be well again. But you're just
Yeah.
wishing wishing for the wellness. But it's not the same as this, where this really like, yeah, reminded me how fragile everyone is and how fragile my body is. I mean, think about what the herniated disc is. I mean, yes, the disc ruptured and this fluid, this tiny thing comes out and presses on your nerve. This little this
Yeah.
structure, let's take two vertebrae and one disc in between, this tiny thing, and it said, and you look at it on the MRI scan, and it's come out like a couple of millimeters. I mean, millimeters are tiny things,
Yeah.
and that millimeter change in your body, in my body, pressed against that nerve and caused complete difference, complete pain and debilitation. And that's the other thing. You start going on Google and looking at all the potential things that it could be, and you realize, holy shit, there's like so many ways your body could be going wrong for this issue right here. And yeah, having
Yeah.
never faced that before, you just can't I can't conceptualize what it's like to be fragile. And it's kind of, I think it's very normal to just get on with things and kind of assume invulnerability, invincibility, because yeah. But now, having felt this, it's like game changer, and that's what I want to hold on to, is that I'm not sure if I can or want to feel invulnerable again, because my feeling of invulnerability and uh, I never get hurt, that's what caused me to get this injury, because I never checked in on myself to check if everything is
Mm.
working. And I remember thinking of this kind
Yeah.
of crude analogy, like my body's like a car, like a machine meat robot that I never took for a service. I
Yeah.
got it and I bought the car was given to me, and I drove it all my life. And I
Yeah.
never, I just, I topped it up when it needed topping up. I may have parked it on the side in the garage for a while, wintered it in Spain for a bit, but I never actually stopped to do a service and check if every part of it is working. And so if something like was loose, your arm starts clicking, I just keep driving, keep getting on with it. And this moment has taught me, like, I have to stop and check the body is working. And
Mm.
that's become the most, like, it's becoming a huge value of mine, that there's nothing more important, at least at this moment, than making sure the body is working before anything else. So I've actually started a new habit of, once a week I put a mark in the calendar. This is the checkup time, and once a week's
Mm-hmm.
probably quite a lot, but at the moment with injury, just checking,
Yeah.
how your joints feeling, how are you stretching, just check in on, is everything working okay. And yeah, I never did that before. Just kept running, feeling some twinge, and think, oh, I'm strong, I'll just get on with it. But no, super
Yeah.
fragile. And I don't think I can get back to being feeling invulnerable again. And I don't know if that's just a part of getting old.
Yeah. Like whether you will be able to not return to that, uh, you know, assumed invulnerability is hard to tell. But I'm immediately reminded of the time in the coffee shop when we were talking about like mental health,
Yeah.
and how you were like very like convinced that everybody should see a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
right? That it would be a good thing if we would just include this in public health, sort of like insurance or whatever. Like everybody needs to see a men like a psychotherapist. Just
Yeah.
make sure, just the checkup. It's the same thing you're talking about your body here. Just like have a checkup, make sure everything's all right. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that everybody needs to like dig for some sort of childhood trauma or whatever, but just checking in and like being like making sure that everything is that at least that you're not overlooking some sort of like major issues that are brewing.
Yeah.
And this was at a time when I myself was undergoing this first hernia, and like trying to get back into, you know not even into shape, but just not feeling constant pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that you were complaining of like slight back issues at the time.
Ah.
But it's interesting that even that, like, it wasn't enough to connect the dots, right? And that's sort of like, hindsight is 2020. type situation that like now it's so clear, and it's like, oh, I should treat my body like this. And it's like you've had all of the sort of like the theoretical concepts there. You've had all the reasons to apply it to like the physical aspect as well. But like until you get knocked on your ass, you just don't like, you don't put it together. And then like now we're like, oh, like I should really be doing this. And like what you're saying now is what I was saying 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, if like I ever get out of this situation, I promise I will never I'll never allow myself to like relapse and like fall back into this situation. And now 3 months ago, my back, started messing with me again. I got over it. And now, like last weekend, it did it again. So, like, I don't know, like, that's why I'm skeptical about the ability to not start to feel invulnerable again once things stop hurting.
It's kind
Like,
of an
in a certain
ignorance, yeah.
sense, but I mean, I understand. Like you made that comparison with having a flu, that you suddenly like you are somewhat reminded of your like vulnerability or fragility or whatever it is. And like the feeling of being able to swallow or breathe or whatever without discomfort is something that you take for granted.
Yeah.
And then when you can't do that, you realize how much you should appreciate being able to breathe, right? But like I assume you're able to breathe without discomfort right now.
Yeah, just
Are
checking.
are you thankful, or
Well,
are you taking it for granted? Because like
well,
I assume
yeah.
that right now you're so focused on your back that you're not being thankful for like being able to breathe without
Yeah.
discomfort. And like that's just how it is being a human, right? Because like you have a checklist of 7,000 things that could be wrong. You can't like take out time out of your everyday life to be thankful for every little bit of it. So like I don't know if it's necessarily the same as like assuming immortality, but there is just this like taking your health for granted, that I don't think like we're being too hard on ourselves if we assume that we should like actively be thankful for everything that works
Yeah.
as it should, because it is sort of that touch of God kind of thing, that if everything works as it should, you shouldn't even notice it at all.
Exactly.
Like, yeah. So
But you
like,
also,
it's
yeah,
just too much to ask.
you can't go around your week constantly being aware of your breath when you're walking down the street. And yes, you can't stop every day to, I don't know how much you should check in or be aware of the things that are working. You definitely shouldn't go on Google to check the things that might go wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
I just, yes, it's some kind of balance between complete sort of ignorance of body and just hoping for that it will keep going, and then yes, and checking in on it occasionally. That's why I'm trying like once a week to, of course, like every time I check once a week, it may not be like no, everything's the same, it's all good, but just as I never did before. Yeah, I am in that sort of state of fear a little bit still, because I'm still not sure. I want to check. But already I find myself lapsing into laziness. Like I'm meant to do physiotherapy every day,
Yeah.
and I haven't been doing it every day. That's insane. I just had a back injury that put me out. I've been prescribed
Yeah.
physiotherapy, and I'm like, in my head is like, I'll do it later. That's insane, because when I was lying on that bed, like you feeling that pain that might be similar to yours, I was wishing for the surgery too. I'm like, anything to fix it, anything. And now I've
Yeah.
been given the tool to make sure it, perhaps heal it faster or make sure it's stronger. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
still not doing it, which is, I can't rationalize that behavior. And I don't know if it's just my character, my laziness. I mean, I'm not a person who's every day doing exercise to, conscious exercise to improve my body, lifting weights or running every day. So maybe I'm just not, I haven't trained myself. I've taken myself for granted too long. But yeah, I need that. My back is telling me I need a habit of strengthening my core now to support it.
Yeah.
But even with you, and you're quite conscious person when it comes to your physical health, right? And
Mm.
so did you still how did you stop your physio? Did you slip into sort of taking it like, oh, it must be fixed now, I have no pain?
Everything that you're saying, you might as well be describing me.
Right.
I was just talking with my brother because he's been experiencing somewhat similar back issues over the last couple of years as well. He's telling me exactly the same thing. I think this is like the story for, I would assume, 9 out of 10 people with back injuries or injuries in general.
Mm.
Like it's that mortal reminder, right? Like it hurts. I'll do my exercises. It doesn't hurt. Well, um like, is it that necessary? Do I really, like, I'm in a bit of a time crunch, like, can I just skip it today? I promise I'll like do it tomorrow
Yeah,
for realsies. And then, tomorrow I'm not feeling worse for wear, so I'm sort of like, maybe I didn't need to do it every day, maybe I can just do it every second day.
I
And like,
got
to be
this.
fair, like at some point when you get like back into shape, you don't need to like maintain this like rigorous exercise regime. Like, it's not going to stay the same. You don't have to, like, I don't know how long time you're like, supposed to be doing exercises right now. Like, I know with my injury when it happened 3 years ago, every exercise routine would be between like 30 and 60 minutes.
Yeah.
And I would have to do that like between like 3 and 5 times a day. Like, obviously you cannot maintain like 5 hours of like stretches on the floor throughout the rest of your life. That makes no sense.
Hmm.
So like eventually you'll boil it down to like maybe 30 minutes of essential rotation and stretch exercises, and then you'll do those like once a week, maybe
Hmm.
even every 2 weeks. It doesn't have to be you know like hours and hours every day or even every week. It can be like a smaller amount of time that you spend on it, but just getting it done, like with some regularity. Like, you'll notice what works better for you.
Mm.
You'll figure out some exercises are good for like keeping it in check. Like, in my experience, like it comes back little sort of like just like shows its head. And you'll know in a situation, if you're at work, you're standing up or you're walking around, like these are little things you can do. Like, often it's like you start to like slouch, right?
Mm.
It's not even like your posture in that like injured area, but it's your upper body. It's like your shoulders, it's your neck, it's like that sort of thing. You'll learn little things you can do, just like stretching your arms over your head, and like you know like being able to nip it in the bud like that is like super valuable. And you'll
Mm.
figure out little things that you can do, um like when it's relevant, right? But I think it's very likely that you're gonna end up sort of like getting too lazy with it, and it's gonna rear its head when you don't expect it, and
So
then you're gonna be reminded what it was like. And hopefully it's just gonna be a reminder. It's not gonna be sort of like a total relapse.
I mean, the thing is, if it comes to this, it's like, what will make me become the the fittest I'm capable of being? Because
Hmm.
I think we may have talked about this in the past, but um, I don't work out that much, and I never really have. But I'm kind of aware of,
Mm.
like, I have a better physical potential. But this comes down to the same kind of conversation. Why don't I pursue a better physical potential? Like, I just talked about how the body is now the most important part of my uh, consciousness, and that comes before everything. Um, and yet still I'm missing this drive to do to even the physio. And I been in this rehabilitation, I've been sitting there looking at ways to
Yeah.
stretch, and you look at people like Athlete X guy, and you're like, okay, there's a better physical potential possible of human, and I'm why don't I strengthen my body for the first time, and
Hmm.
then it gives it more chance of not getting to this debilitated state. And I don't know why I can't get myself in. And yeah, of course, many people are like this, right? Like you say, you're
Hmm.
talking to your friend, your brother, about the same thing. Like, even when you're faced with this thing so recently, why isn't that enough to then, like, okay, I'm gonna change and be fitter, or is this the fittest I will ever be now, and that's it?
Like I would think that it comes down to like that this is like very sort of like fundamental like personal perception of like, you know, what is you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think when I was younger, when I was a teenager especially, I did not care about physical like fitness or health or wellness or whatever. um my body worked fine. My body was like great. I could, eat cheeseburgers and play computer games, for a full weekend and lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
Like my metabolism was like super active, and like um it was easy to just live in my body, and that was like my perception, right? That like you made this like metaphor before of saying that your body is a car. Like
Mm-hmm.
I sort of like considered my body like the vehicle of my consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Like my consciousness just can't go around on its own, so it's just like driving around this flesh robot or car or whatever.
Yeah.
Like and like for a long time I sort of like I had this attitude that I wanted to invest all of my potential into my sort of like mental life,
Yeah.
right? Like it was my consciousness, my like my thinking was my strength, my creativity, my talking, my like that sort of stuff. Even the things like obviously you can't like do any of these things without your body, but it's still something that we consider largely sort of like mental or whatever, like largely non bodily activities.
Mm-hmm.
Even things like playing music or drawing, being sort of like visually creative, is something that I didn't really attribute to like a body sort of uh thing. It was much more like a mentality and like intellect, um like association. And like it took a long time for me to get to a point where I started to see like a bigger interconnectedness between like my body and my mind. um I think now it's very clear that even like you have these very obvious connections. Like if you're sad and like frustrated and angry and whatever, you have a tendency again to sort of like drop your shoulders and your head, and you
Mm-hmm.
slouch and you're looking down. And you can actively like improve your mood if you decide to like straighten your spine, like roll your shoulders back, head up, and just open yourself up physically.
Mm-hmm.
And like that sounds like, to my teenage self, that would have sounded like a bunch of bullshit. Like I would not have bought that. Um, but but now like I actually like I know that it works because I do this. Like if I start like spiraling into some sort of like emotional pit, I try to be conscious of this. Like I try to not, like shut myself in, like wearing headphones in the streets and looking at the ground. And, I try to like open up and like take in what's outside of me and just,
Yeah.
like be like this physical consciousness, like being aware of your presence in like in the streets or wherever you're at, and like your posture, like how you are where you are. um and like that's something I'm just interested in hearing your like view of this, because I think that I know you've been into like yoga and jogging and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how you've been seeing this sort of like interrelationship between body and mind up until this point, and has it changed with this recent injury?
That I relate, yeah, relate to what you're saying a lot about how you hold yourself and how you notice yourself in the space you're in. And it's not just a question of being fit. I got had this thought, it's not just a question of your value. So so I value being fit to a certain level, and so I'm maybe stuck in that younger self where yes, the body works and that's a good enough vehicle for the mind, but I've at some points pushed myself beyond my current kind of equilibrium, this standard fitness, and I've been fitter than I am now. I've been less fit than my standard balance, and but the thing that so I won't go down to this chubby level anymore. Um, but somehow, yes, I've reached equilibrium, and it's not just it's not just a standard um, that would get me up here any again. It's somehow being up there is like it changes the way yes my consciousness acts. It changes my mood. It changes my confidence, mentality. I don't know. Yes, changes my mind being fitter.
Mhm.
Um, Now it's strange that I'm not pursuing to get back there anymore, um, because it's like this whole thing of why am I doing my physio? Because yes, I know that I feel better up there. Um, so it's like it's not just this. It's not just that I'm falling below my standard. It's just that is a. It's not just my standard. That is a better standard for my physical potential. And
Mm.
when I've been there, um, uh, I I just my standards aside, I feel better in the universe. Like you've upgraded your car, you've put new shiny things on it, and it can go faster and be more
Yeah.
capable. And yeah, and I hear that from people who are like very fit people, you know,
Mhm.
and I can't imagine what it's like to be in this kind of Rolls Royce body that's completely tweaked, and every part of it you've put work into, and it's holding your consciousness in this very uh, efficient, strong machine.
Yeah.
Um, but I kind of believe in that, thinking that those people, yes, they say they it's like they, it's a completely different way of being. But recently, yeah, I've stopped running. But even before my injury, I stopped running, stopped going to the gym for a while. The gyms have been shut for a while now,
Yeah.
and I would just tell myself, "Oh, that's okay. I do lots of physical activity work, and I do. But
Yeah.
if something it doesn't upgrade my level, that takes a certain amount of effort and will, and application and focus, and
Yeah.
yeah, um, that's what I need
Like,
to get to for a better head.
yeah. But like I understand when you're making this comparison with people that are like very sort of like fitness focused in their life,
Mm,
there's always going to be a trade-off, right? Like if you go for this like extremely high, like the Rolls Royce body,
mm,
you were probably like committed to that project over anything else. You know, people who, like you mentioned, this Athlean X guy, I forget what his name is, Jeff something.
yeah.
um like obviously he has like an extremely high functioning body, but he also definitely doesn't drink alcohol, not the
Hmm.
occasional beer, nothing, right? Like he doesn't eat cake. I think like I've heard him say that he has like a piece of carrot cake once a year. Like there's a huge trade-off, right? Like this is not a sort of, workout twice a week, um like be somewhat mindful of what you eat. This is like an extremely strict regime that takes over your entire life. And like not being willing to go to that level is very understandable. I think very few people are. Um, but then when you're talking about like reaching this level that you have been at before, like are we still talking about this trade-off where it's just because it's too much effort and you don't actually feel like the return is big enough, or or do you have this like knowledge that there is actually a great return if only you get your butt off the couch and get out for that
Mm.
like go out for that jog? because like I think like for me, I know that I would benefit from being more physically active, but it's so hard to motivate myself to do it still.
Mm.
And that's an interesting place to be at, right?
Yeah,
Like what is
why?
it that like when you know rationally that like we will say stuff to ourselves like I don't have the energy to go for a run, right? But we also know, both you and I, from having been there before, that when you start like running you get more energy,
Yeah,
right? That's the
yeah.
thing. Everybody who's physically fit they say they have more energy. They have like this whole surplus of like energy for all sorts of things that would otherwise like stress them out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's not just like being like physically fit and being able to like run faster or further, but it's also just like being able to overcome daily like challenges and like stressful situations that relate to your day-to-day life. That you would be benefiting in every way from being just a little bit more physically active, but you don't choose that. And I can't myself figure out why that is. Like is it just this like it's like this initial buy-in that like I know I'm gonna like have to swallow 20 minutes of mild discomfort from
Mm-hmm.
like running around, but then I'm gonna get so much in return in the long run.
Yeah.
Is it really like, are we so short term oriented that we see that 20 minutes and we're like, I can't be bothered?
That's how it's been for me recently. It's like, yes, physio maybe takes, if I do the very least, it's half an hour. Very least half an hour. And that's
Yeah.
a lazy work, that's a lazy physio. But I'm like, I do I don't want to commit that time. I want to do other things, like things for my mind. We were saying about body and mind earlier, choosing what to work. So I work on things for my mind. I want to put myself into flow state with my focus, and but I know the trade-off is better, especially now with this back. It's like the risk of not doing the physio is far outweighs doing it and taking that time. And I have that memory of being at a higher level. Like, yes, if I run, if I tell myself I don't want to run, but then I go for a run anyway, not only was my telling myself I don't want to run because I've got no energy a lie, because 5K in, you're on a roll, you get into it, and you get back, and then you feel amazing, you've got more energy. And I remember from those times where I was more active, that yeah, that time spent, say even if I ran an hour a week, I know that the rest of my week I'll have more energy. So it does seem for me to be like just completely short term orientated. Like, I'd rather do work on Photoshop today than do my to do my physio. And
Yeah.
that makes no logical sense. It's almost as if, for me, working out the body means turning off my consciousness, my mind. And many times when I work out, I find I'm kind of doing that, and I'm not so. I don't really enjoy that. I'm definitely into doing mind things like playing music, working out problems on computer programs, or
Mm-hmm.
and I guess those people who are completely disciplined and put all their time into working out would have something to say about where their mind goes when they're doing those 5,000 reps a day.
Yeah.
But for me, it's always a bit of like, I don't like turning off my head, and I've tried listening to podcasts or books or music, but it all seems to be a way to just kind of zone out
Mm.
when I'm doing those things. If I could run and still, write a song, or run and I could still write a book or do something productive with my head, that would make the running more engaging for me. But something about that, it seems like wasted time to work on body, because the mind is always wanting to create something more. So mind is always winning at the moment, and it's not fair on the body. Um, but yeah, the investments,
Yeah, that's
it's not balanced.
yeah, it's very interesting. Like I think it's very obvious that it seems like there's no immediate like gratification to that sort of activity. If it's not immediately satisfying to make that decision to turn off your mind and just be sort of, body conscious and not really, not do anything critical or creative with your mind, then you will have to, you'll have to opt for like deferred gratification over immediate gratification.
Yeah.
And I think, like, if we're being perfectly rational, it's almost always like the better choice. Like,
For immediate gratification.
deferred gratification, no, deferred gratification. Like,
Ah.
if you can defer like that and like wait with getting like the benefit in the long run, that's almost always better, right? Like, this classic sort of like, should I have ice cream? Well, immediate gratification says ice cream, deferred gratification says not putting on like an extra pound worth of ice cream.
Mm.
um but like, in the situation, of course, it's not like a choice between immediate gratification and deferred gratification. It's a choice between ice cream or no ice cream, right? So there's no gratification on the other side.
Yeah.
You get something now or you don't get something now.
Yeah.
And then later on, you might thank yourself that you didn't do the thing you wanted back when you wanted it. But like, when this is the option that you're presenting to yourself, like, should I do something with my mind that I want to do, or should I not do something with my mind that I want to do? Then like, it becomes easier for us to understand why we're choosing that, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, like, the people who enjoy going to the gym much more regularly, they are not choosing between something they want to do and not something they want to do, but they actually find that like physical activity to be immediately gratifying.
Mm.
So like, I think this is the mistake that a lot of people make when they do this mental exercise. They say, I don't know how you can do this boring thing. Like I can't do the boring thing. Like, to those people who decide to do it and manage to do it regularly, it's not a boring thing. I can't imagine that they have like the mental strength to just opt for like deferred gratification every single time. I think there's an aspect of learning that deferred gratification is like, preferable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, once you get the ball rolling, it is easier to tell yourself, yeah, I don't want to do it right now, but I will thank myself later. Like, once you start seeing results of that sort of behavior, yeah, I mean, I understand that you would like that it gets easier to opt for that, but I think the thing that makes this consistent is that you actually manage to like acquire a mindset in which the, like, in your case, the body focused activity, the sort of like non mental activity, becomes something immediately gratifying,
Yeah.
something that you're looking forward to.
Yeah.
Like, I think for me, it was more like, I tried to tell myself, when I go to the gym, it's the only time during the week when I don't have my phone on me. There's no contacting me. There's no checking what other people are doing. There's
Mm-hmm.
no, nothing work related, like none of that. I'm not generally like a super like stressed out person. Um, but it's very nice to have me time and to like devote, you know, an hour twice a week to just being really present. So it was almost like, without really having a lot of experience with mindfulness, I sort of like always thought of it as a sort of mindfulness.
Yeah.
Like, I would go to the gym. I had a personal trainer. He would be counting the repetitions I was doing. I wasn't even counting. I was just like being present and like doing the exercises as well as I could,
Mm-hmm.
trying to focus on like what my body was doing. And like that sort of, like attention to my body and like my presence there was something that I didn't get anywhere else.
Mm.
And I think like that made it more satisfying to be a part of. And like, if I like when I do my workout on my own, like I do now because of quarantine, I don't get the same experience because now I have to count reps. I have to like measure time,
Mm-hmm.
like all of these things. Like I have to like make the decisions what we're doing next.
Ah,
Um, but being in a situation where like you don't know what comes up next, so it means that you don't you're not doing one exercise with the next exercise in mind. You're just doing this exercise. This is what you're doing right now. If we're doing like static squats and it burns like all hell in like in your legs, there's no stopping early. There's no like, because I don't even know what early is, because I'm not taking the time, right? Like I'm just doing a squat. I'm just there
mm,
participating in that like activity in that moment. And when we're done, then then we're done, and then I don't know what's going to be next. There's an element of frustration to that as well, right? That you've just put in all you had, and now you're being told that you're doing another minute of that.
mm-hmm.
Like it's not necessarily fun, but the ability to like just be 100% present in that moment, I
Yeah.
think, is very different when you're not the one who decides when you're done.
Yeah.
You just do the thing, and you trust that the person who's like overseeing your activity won't allow you to injure yourself.
And there's a couple things there. It's like that having a reason to go to the gym that's not for the end goal. So I want to be shredded. I'm going to go to the gym, and there's sort of a time between those the idea and the actualization. So
Mhm.
I never went to the maybe it's a mistake of mine, but I when I did go to the gym, I never went with that goal in mind. But uh, it reminds me, like you said, it gets time for yourself, and so I didn't go to the gym for that end goal, but I was going to the gym, which is a good thing. But I
Mhm.
was going so I could listen to metal for an hour, and I was like,
Yeah.
in my week, that's a great chance to be by myself. No one's going to bug me. I'm just in this cacophony of tesseract for an hour, and
Yeah.
um, and that was a wonderful pleasure. I wasn't even thinking of the workout. And but somehow, for me, metal and lifting weights feels good to go to get those things go together.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's the thing. If I think now, oh, I need to strengthen my abs to support my back, that's not going to start me doing physio. I need to
Mhm.
enjoy the process, and that's what I was doing when I had that time in the gym. And yes, once I look forward to going to have that metal time, not even lifting weights, but it's called it metal time, and
Yeah.
and um, so yeah, without the goal in mind. But once I'd already started that process, um, it's it's very easy to keep it going. It's like I'm also very in the moment, so I recognize that it was a kind of meditation to do exercise. So that's the
Yeah.
kind of point you're making, I guess. It's very mindful, brings you focus routine, so that yeah, sort of taking me out of my mind, but somehow being mindful of the present at least, which is a healthy habit. And so now I've caught myself talking about that, and I realized that yes, I could get to that state where I'm not in conscious thought and constructive thoughts, and it's really nice. But I
Mhm.
just have to have a reason to exercise. But being on the outside of exercise now, I can't see that rational reason to get in. I don't it doesn't look enjoyable. I don't know why I would do that. And so that's a good point you mentioned. Exercise for some other reason, not find that thing that you just do for the pleasure of it. That's what makes
Yeah.
people do anything, right? It's for the pleasure. It's not for the kind of for the long term goal. Like today, I'm designing loads of stuff on Photoshop, but I'm doing sort of one page at a time. I'm not thinking that
Yeah.
eventually, oh, and then at the end of the day, oh shit, I made 50 pages here. Not thinking I made a book. Um, it's like I'm just enjoying the pleasure of that one page, and that's the way to exercise, at least for me. Yeah,
That's definitely like a good path towards success.
yeah,
If you're hating every step of it, but you think the end goal is going to be worthwhile, like every step is going to be tainted by the thought, what if it's not, right?
yeah,
Like you're always going to think, what if the end goal isn't going to be what I wanted it to be? And if we're talking, workout, then you go to the gym and you go back and you look in the mirror and you go like, that wasn't what I wanted at all. Like I don't see the results yet. And people will tell you, oh, you don't get results in the first day. You have to wait a month, right?
Mm.
And then you work out for a month and you step on the scales and you weigh the same.
Mhm.
And you're like, well, where's my gratification? I've been
Yeah,
waiting. I
yeah.
didn't take the immediate gratification because I hated every moment of it. And now it's been a month and there's still nothing. Like, of course, like if you don't enjoy like the process, then like you're very likely to just quit the project before you get the results that you were doing it for.
Mm.
Because even the results, like even if you are getting some results, they might not be what you expected. um
Yeah.
so yeah, definitely, like the same thing with working with Photoshop or whatever. You are like honing your skills, right? And you might not see it from like from illustration to illustration or like whatever it is that you're doing, like, but it is getting better. And if you're enjoying that process, like it's great.
Yeah.
Like you're slowly benefiting, but if the end goal is never the reason why you're motivated to do it in the first place, then it doesn't matter whether you end up becoming like a professional illustrator or
Mm.
you end up getting shredded or whatever. Like,
Yeah, motivation's not enough for me to exercise in that world.
yeah,
I can see like a body type like, oh, I think I can get to that, and that might start a motivation, but that will never be enough to carry me through. And so many times I've started on a routine, and my motivation will kind of what's this stubbornness will keep me going for, it could keep me going for 3 months, but
yeah,
it will end eventually because I can get up and be like, I'm hard, I'm doing this thing. This is a strong thing to do, but it's only stubbornness and determination that's keeping me going. It's not enjoyment at all. And
yeah,
that's always fails every time. It always ends. So I'll give up on that.
yeah. I was just thinking, did you ever used to smoke when you were younger?
Yeah, yeah.
And you quit that, yeah?
Yes.
And like in my experience, that is one of those things where like it requires like a huge amount of determination to like take that initial step and say, like, I'm quitting,
Hmm.
and then to manage to quit for more than a day or a week or something, right?
Hmm.
It's typically like the coming weekend that ruins your quitting attempt.
Hmm.
um it takes a huge amount of determination to like make that decision. But like while you're smoking, you notice all these things that are like, like it takes too much of my time, it's ridiculously expensive, like it smells bad,
Hmm.
like my girlfriend doesn't enjoy it, like, you have all sorts of like good reasons why you actually don't want to smoke. It's unhealthy from what I hear. um and then once you haven't been smoking for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, all of those reasons, they really start to fade away, right?
Yeah,
you
yeah.
you actually forget, like it was so clear to you when you decided to quit smoking why you wanted like to reach that ideal of like not smoking anymore. But then just a couple of weeks in, you just like you don't have that, like you can remember maybe like what these arguments were, but it's just it you don't feel them with you because like it's not with you anymore, right?
Yeah. And you
Like,
can you can write a video to
how
yourself
was that?
and it won't work.
Yeah, how's that for you, like quitting smoking? Was it an easy task? Was it like, did you have to like try it several times, or like, or does it seem similar to this sort of like, deciding that you want to reach a certain level of physical fitness or whatever it is?
That, that's a good one, smoking, because yeah, it directly affects your mortality. But when you're doing it, you don't care, and it's like not exercising with this. It's like going sledging with a back injury right now. It's like insane to
Mm,
smoke, and as I was a smoker, I knew it was insane, but still it happens, and I don't know if that's just the nicotine that keeps it going. Um, but quitting it was, now I'm not sure if I've still quit. I haven't smoked in as long as I can remember, but there's been so many times where, yeah, the circumstances come around and then I pick up a cigarette again. Like I forget my reasons for quitting, as I did, you know, like probably, yeah, 3 weeks in, my reasons are all like quite powerful, and then 3 weeks in, I feel healthier. I could probably take a few cigarettes. It's not gonna. I can, you know, I've made room for them in this healthiness or something like this. And but cigarettes are quite insidious in the way that they would like tell me to, or at least my brain makes these conversations like, yeah, you can just have this now. It's fine. You know, you worked, you had 3 weeks and, you know, you did a good job. Well done. Have a cigarette. You know, you don't smoke. But then, of course, you carry on. And,
Yeah.
but it's a weird one, smoking, because I don't know if I've actually quit. And they say smokers never quit. So even, I'm trying to think back to the last cigarettes I had. Yes, I had a forest job, outdoor job. And I, I sort of started smoking, don't know how I started, just socially as usual. I don't know what made me
Mm-hmm.
pick up the first one. That idea that I can get away with this. Oh, I can stop when I want. But I felt the moment, sort of 6 weeks into this new habit and new job, where I was smoking quite often, that it was starting to put its hooks in me. Like I would start
Uh-huh.
noticing I would be more conscious of cigarettes where I hadn't been before. So I could feel the addiction coming at me. Um, so smoking is a good one to remind me uh, how subtle addiction can be. So the way
Yeah.
it started speaking to me, like it would be like I'd say I'm just going to smoke this cigarette. I'm just going to smoke this weekend. I'm just going to smoke this month. I'm just going to smoke till the end of this summer job. I'm just going to smoke for this year, and it would be
Yeah.
like it would just tell me, oh, you're just a smoker because that's cool, and you're always going to be a smoker. And it would, so smoking's a strange one to have quit, and I quit for, I think I needed help from, yeah, I had a girlfriend at the time who didn't like that. I probably could have
Mm-hmm.
kept smoking while I was with her, but I needed that uh, shame to help me quit. And
Yeah.
so it was she didn't make me feel shameful, but I felt shameful for her, you know, for disrespecting her or for not being
Yeah.
able to be around her or for making her uncomfortable. So the
Mm-hmm.
shame helped me quit. And that would be a good thing to feel now with body. Like shame's a dangerous thing to put upon yourself. Um, but in that instance, it was quite powerful.
Yeah. No, you're right. I'm not sure shame is like the best emotion to sort of like instrumentalize.
Mm.
Um, it's sort of like it seems like a kind of like dark path to go down and say, but it's for the greater good. Um, you know, but I think like particularly with smoking, like it shares this similarity of like, each individual incident is no big deal, right?
Yes. Yeah.
One cigarette is not going to give you cancer. One cigarette is not going to like ruin anything, right? It's not any of the individual cigarettes you have that is going to like cause cancer, like, or ruin your life or
Mm.
whatever. So it makes it more difficult to quit. You don't see, like whether I quit now or, a pack later doesn't seem to make a difference, right?
Yeah.
And especially if you have a like, an unfinished pack, you're not going to quit before you finish the pack, right?
Hmm.
Because they would be stupid. What are you going to do with the rest of your cigarettes? Um,
It's
but
complete
like,
short term, yeah,
yeah,
gratification. Yeah.
when you look at other addictive substances, I think like without having particular experience with it, there's a different incentive to stay sober. Like if you've been addicted to heroin and you manage to kick it, there's a huge incentive not to relapse because that one hit can like ruin your life.
Mm.
Actually, cigarettes cannot do that to you. There's no way. Like your wife isn't going to leave you over one cigarette, right? One cigarette isn't going to cause cancer. You're not going to lose your job over one cigarette. You're not going to fall into like crippling debt over one cigarette. Nothing's going to happen. And like that makes it so much more difficult on a psychological level
Yeah.
to stay strong, because your weakness means nothing, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
You feel like you can lower your guard. And I think that's very similar with these workout things. Like it feels like nothing is going to happen if you don't take your physio super seriously, right?
Hmm.
Like you just take it seriously enough, right? Like you have an occasional cigarette when you've been a good boy. Like you have a, like cheeky pint of ice cream. Like all these like little things that don't seem to make a huge impact on
Yeah.
their own.
Yeah.
It's not the same as, like making some sort of like huge life decision. Like you want to, like, you do heroin once and it literally like fucks up your life. Like it's so difficult to make a decision on whether you should be, taking this immediate gratification or not, because it doesn't seem to have that long-term effect. but
Yeah.
it but it does.
It does, and yes, it's completely accumulative, and it's so hard to see that. And there's this that worry of like with this back issue, that that well, I started saying this. Makes me feel old to have this, and I imagine like what it's like to be an old person who's just paying for their misuse of their body when they're old. Like I'm sort of starting to look at my parents and seeing, what, how is their health affecting them, and can I preempt own issues that are talking to me now, like, and not face the same things they do? Okay, my father gets arthritis, and hell, I want to play guitar when I'm an old man. How do I prevent that now? And so I started thinking long term, but it is really hard because there's no immediate consequence to not doing these physio things. But there needs to be that consciousness of using your time now, some of your time, to build like this, I don't know, foundation, or just keep up this foundation of strength and capability. But you know
Yeah.
kind of reluctant to turn this toward culture, but we are encouraged to be uh it, into what's the word, to be in um to be as comfortable as possible, and we
Hmm.
striving for comfort all the time. Whereas, our ancestors would have had to be a lot more active, and if you weren't strong and fast enough, you wouldn't be able to eat. Um, back if you couldn't
But
throw
don't
your
you think
spear
even
hard
back
enough.
then, like I would assume that back then, like complacency was a goal in and of itself. Being able to become complacent would have been like a massive achievement, right?
Yeah,
And I think that's what remains with us. That like we've always aimed for like a life of less like just fewer hurdles, right? A less
yeah,
burdensome life, one where
yeah.
we could like allow ourselves to be complacent, allow ourselves to be lazy. Like
Mm,
I think that's always been a goal. Like
yeah,
there's no, like I don't think there's an animal that opts for the path of most resistance, right? Like that's
true,
not a viable survival strategy.
true.
Now we've just reached a point where like complacency is so available that we can actually sort of like permit ourselves to like slip off.
That's a
And like
great point.
that's
Yeah. Because it made me think of, okay, I'm talking about hunters, and then
mhm.
we designed agriculture, and we're like, oh, we can kick back a little bit now. The food's growing itself, it's right out there, I can see it, it'll be ready in a few months, and I got more time for leisure and thinking. And yeah, of course. And yes, you watch how a deer moves through the forest. Well, it follows the path all the other deer took before it, and you get animal trails. Yeah, animals choose the path of least resistance too. It's smart in an evolutionary sense. It means you can get more done, and we do. But yes, we've got to a point where we're completely able to have so much uh, luxury and comfort. Then why on earth do you go to the gym to lift weights? Because you don't need to, like,
Mm.
logically, you don't need to do that. You can get away your whole life with not doing that, and you can even make bad health choices in some regard. Like, you can drink a little bit, you can smoke a little bit and get away with it probably, and you can eat badly and at a moderate level, and healthcare is improved enough to kind of look after some of these problems. So the consequences are so far off in the future and so less, yeah, immediate, and it's talking about being motivated. It's obviously a nice thing to hear that, oh, of course, it's our natural state to have path of least resistance. But as we were saying, it's not the best thing for our minds.
I mean, it's not, it shouldn't be a reason to give up. I think like for me, what I'm trying to see it as is more like the reason why the healthy choice should not be an insurance policy, right?
Yeah.
Like when you were saying like your dad has like issues that might be like, or at least have a hereditary component,
Mm-hmm.
like you want to avoid that, right? So you can play guitar when you're old. Um, I don't think you will like manage to like maintain a routine of doing all the good and healthy things because you want to avoid like consequences down the line. I don't see how you're gonna be able to maintain those routines if you are like sort of like genetically coded to like opt for complacency when possible, right? You need to shift your sort of like your attention or your orientation in a way that, as we talked about, makes those choices seem like the thing you actually want to do, right?
Yeah.
Like you need to attribute that immediate gratification to the healthy choices. Like I don't know, like I, I don't think when people try to sell, healthy things by telling you they're healthy, like, we're already off to a bad start. When people are telling me, like, yesterday I was told that the chocolate that has like 90% cocoa content is actually healthy. I was sort of like, that's something you have to say because it tastes terrible,
Yes.
right? Like when has people ever told you chocolate is healthy? They never needed to tell you that because it's
Mm.
delicious. Like it sells itself. You don't need to
Mm-hmm.
add that sort of like, it's actually healthy. Like that's something people say about broccoli because it tastes terrible. Like I happen to like broccoli, but that sort of thing of having to sell it with the health benefit, it just shows so clearly that like that's an insurance policy.
Mm.
That's something you're doing because of like the deferred gratification, because oh, you don't want to feel terrible in the future. Well, you want to feel great right now, right?
Yeah. Always.
So like of course you want to opt for the peanut butter flavored ice cream. Like why not, right? But if you can somehow like attribute that like gratification to the healthy choice,
Mm.
like I think that's the way to go. I don't think you should sell broccoli as a healthy like food.
So
I
how
know
do you get
like
to
we're
that
we're
place?
trying with like superfoods, right? Like
Yeah.
I think superfood is a way of communicating that doesn't say this is like a healthy choice so much as it's saying this is a hack, this is a sort of like loophole, deal with the devil kind of thing. Like it's actually amazing.
Mm-hmm.
um but superfoods are also most of the time like, what are superfoods? Like kale and like chia seeds and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's generally food that's not exactly palatable. Like you need to do a lot to this food in order to make it like sort of traditionally delicious.
Mm-hmm.
um yeah.
Diet's like
You were,
a whole other thing because a meat there's nothing quite as immediate as eating, for gratification. And if you're not a drug
mhm.
taker, then it's the thing we all do. So that's why, of course, uh, sugar is big business, and like, yeah, we're uh, all hooked into that line. And I'm trying to quit the sugar because I think it's a huge component in dealing with uh, the in cultivating a practice of getting rid of immediate gratification. So,
Mhm.
uh, sorry, of cultivating, yes, a long term, a healthier kind of form of gratification, and I realized that how huge a part of that is like is diet. And yes, I should want the things like the broccoli and the acai berries or whatever the superfoods are. Um, but somehow, like not working out, my brain will go for the Snickers instead. And again, like it's an insane choice. It makes no logical choice to get that thing. So, but by saying no, I'm not going to eat those things. I'm in that process now. It's what, February? It's been 2 months, and so it's New Year's challenge, and I can always feel sort of the rewiring happening. Like I'm not wanting those sweets, and yes, when I don't have many other bad habits that will um, um, sort of be like these immediate gratification habits.
Mhm.
So, fortunate in that regard, but it needs. I think that's the thing we're talking about. Like, if you can rewire yourself away from any immediate gratification, that would be an amazing place to never be a slave to that idea. Is that possible to get away from any trick of immediate gratification? And I don't know. I think that sounds like a healthy way to live.
Yeah, like I said before, I really like I believe that like these two things are true. One, that when you get more experience with that delayed gratification, you realize the benefit of it, and it makes it easier to opt for that, like as you get more experience with it. And the other thing, I think it might be a better strategy to try to attribute immediate gratification to those choices,
Hmm.
like to sort of like shift your perception of them, if that is possible.
Yeah.
um and I don't know, like if you want to take like these like acai berries instead of a Snickers bar. Like how do you sort of like rework the narrative to make the berries the choice that you attribute to or to which you attribute immediate gratification?
Hmm. It.
Like I don't know, like maybe you need to sort of like reframe the Snickers bar to a more immediate association with like obesity or laziness, or like if you started like associating sort of like your own worst qualities with you know with making that choice,
Hmm.
then maybe you can like actively try to stigmatize it away from the association with that immediate gratification. Like I know, like when I used to smoke weed very sort of like regularly. I used to smoke every day for several years, and
Wow.
eventually I had to make a decision on whether I wanted to keep doing that or not.
Uh-huh.
And similar to what you said about cigarettes, like my girlfriend at the time was a major component in like helping me manage to quit that. And it was like that feeling of guilt, right? That became so strongly associated with smoking that like I actually stopped feeling pleasure when I got high
Mm-hmm.
because I would always feel guilty. And then like when I started making that association, it completely like removed any interest in getting high for me, because I knew that like if I would smoke, it would just make me feel nauseous and guilty, and that's not a good high for anybody. So
Mm-hmm.
like once I connected that and like established that association, it became a lot easier for me to stay away from weed, because
Yeah.
it lost all its appeal. Maybe you can do the same thing with sugar, right? Like maybe you can like kind of shame yourself out of making those choices. Um but then, like similar to what I said about cigarettes, this like one cigarette isn't going to ruin your life, right? One Snickers bar isn't going to ruin your life. I came to a point at which I was like quite convinced that like smoking weed one time would be like the straw, right?
Mm.
That would be the end of my relationship that I was in at the time. Or like there were other contributing factors as well. Like I started like feeling paranoia pretty much all the time, and once I realized that I could live without being paranoid, that was a pretty appealing reason not to get high anymore. And I knew that these things would all come back like immediately if I would smoke again.
Right.
So there is that difference, that I think it is like just it's a more potent substance, and that makes it more compelling to stick with your difficult choice.
Yeah.
With a less potent substance like sugar or nicotine or caffeine or whatever it is, it's just like it's a tougher sell, right? Like I think, I don't know how long you've been staying away from sugar now. You said since New Year's.
So yeah,
Like,
2 months, just under 2 months. Yeah.
so you probably feel like, I've never done this myself, but from what I understand, like your sort of like your blood sugar levels will stabilize. So you don't get all of these like, swings in like in energy. You don't get all these like peaks and troughs.
Yeah.
And if you then do like eat, if you would eat a Snickers bar now, it's not the same as if I would, because your
Yes.
body is so unused to like that extreme like sugar spike,
Hmm.
that it's actually going to feel like uncomfortable for you, right? Like this would be another motivating factor, that like once you're over the initial 3 weeks or whatever, you actually reach a different state.
Hmm.
And you can like explain to yourself, like, or even just try, like, experience it. If you have like that kind of sugar, your body isn't ready for it,
Mm.
right?
And it's
And
just
like maybe
not
maybe that's
it's not a
a
pleasure. Yeah. It's, so you eat this
Mhm.
thing, and I can see these things as they used to be like a little pleasurable thing to have, and it's not. It's completely changed what the image of that. Let's say chocolate bar is a good example, and
Mhm.
I stand behind people in the queue in the supermarket, and I see there's those chocolate bars by the counter, and there's that moment where people are like, they're just waiting in the queue, and they're like, yeah, okay, I'll get two of those king size Snickers. They make that little decision,
Yeah.
and that's a weird decision. Like, I that product is not, it's not a nutritional food source of any kind, really. It's just a little moment of pleasure, and so that those things now look different to me. It's like, oh,
Hmm.
that's just a little pick me up shelf here, like an endorphin shelf. And
Yeah.
it's a weird thing that exists, because yeah, I'm not still off the sugar because I'm afraid of that spike and that up and down. Although yes, I do feel more balanced in terms of energy. Like my what I eat will now create these spikes. Just the way insulin acts when you eat. So I'm kind of now at a case where I can, if I have the wrong food or too much food at the wrong time, I can feel these drops and spikes, which is
Yeah.
nicer, cleaner way to not be interrupted by these sugar things, which add a whole other element. But just the fact that
Mm.
those products look different now, they look sinister in some way. It's like the pack of cigarettes. It looks on the shelf like, I know that thing has no value for me. That it's not really a. There's no point in putting that into your body. It's not just a thing I would just pick up without thinking anymore. It's become like, is it
Yeah.
useful? Not really. It's easier to have. Yeah, there's no immediate consequence, but it's like, it's also in my head, it's kind of a pointless thing. And like that thing it gives me, which is what that little gratification of a sugar rush. Um, I don't. I guess I'm not missing it enough,
Mm.
or remembering what it feels like.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with the points that you're making, but I will say that I am still like, I am like eating sweets quite regularly. I'm trying to make it less of a daily occurrence
Mm-hmm.
and more of a sort of like, occasional thing. Because like for me, I often get into this sort of like it's like the floodgates are open. I have chocolate one day, and
Mm-hmm.
then the following day the question isn't should I, it's like, which chocolate are we having today,
Yeah.
or
When.
like it's the question is between chocolate and ice cream or cookies or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But like, so like if I manage to sort of like, stop myself from having sweets one day, then I can keep going for like several days without having sweets. It's not
Mm.
a given that I must have something. But as soon as I permit it one day, my brain sort of seems to say, okay, well, it's allowed now, so we're having it.
Yeah.
Um, and I tried to do like January without sweets, and it
Uh,
was a sort of like, partial success, I guess. But the idea was then, like, I feel this sort of like snapback effect. If I'm like disallowing sweets for a month and then I allow myself again, I will just come back with a vengeance, and I
Yeah.
will like, it might even backfire and like make me worse off than before I started, because I will like overindulge so much. So I thought maybe instead I could set up a sort of system where I would say, you know, I can have sweets on the weekend. It's fine. But
Hmm.
if it's a like a work day, then no more often than every other day, right?
Mm.
So I'd say, if I had sweets on Sunday, then not on Monday. I could have sweets on Tuesday and then again on Thursday and then on the weekend, whatever. So that's not a particularly like rigorous system.
Mm.
Like there's a lot of space for having sweets still, but there's some consciousness of it. Um and like to be honest, I haven't really felt that sort of like, energy fluctuation be an issue for me. Um just the same as I don't feel particularly affected by like caffeine.
Right.
I can drink a pitcher of coffee and go to bed.
Hmm.
I can start my working day without coffee, no problem. I really enjoy coffee, but for the taste of it. I
Yeah.
don't I don't need coffee. I don't get coffee headaches if I don't have it. I don't get all buzzy if I have several cups. Um I mean, if I've spent a whole day just drinking black coffee and not eating anything, yeah, I'll start to sort of like, buzz a little bit, but like generally it doesn't have a big impact on me. So like it's a similar thing with sweets. I don't feel like it changes my energy or my stress or my mood. Um it's just something I like to do, but it like from a health conscious, like more of a body aspect. I like when I was in my teens and my 20s, I didn't see any impact of it at all. But now that I've like entered my 30s, I'm seeing much more of an actual sort of like physical impact on my body when I don't monitor what I eat. So that's really the motivation for me to like try to eat um less of that.
It's completely psychological for me. Like I'm not so in tune that I'm noticing if the sugar is changing my body. It doesn't seem to change very quickly at all, really, or at least I don't eat enough sugar to make it like change dramatically.
Mm,
But yeah, that obviously is great motivation if you're feeling body change. It's like uh, the it's like yes, you can get away with stuff in your 20s maybe, or when you're younger, and then like the things I was doing to injure my back, I was getting away with in my 20s somehow, and now
yeah.
I can't do that anymore. But yes, the sugar thing is more psychological, is in that way that you might see yourself binge on sugar more than you have sugar more than you did before you stopped if you impose like complete restriction on it. I'm like, yeah, I can get into that place even without, if I'm just eating sugar normally, I can get into these little phases where it's just very like I can consume so much all of a sudden, then it'll come down, and then so much, and it seems
Yeah.
to have a, yeah, I definitely used it as a kind of a pick me up or an entertainment of some kind, I guess.
Mm,
But now, yes, now it looks different. Like I don't know. I'm not getting that entertainment from that place. Um, and also in this time off away from work, I noticed, talking of like addiction and things that aren't serving psychologically, I got rid of YouTube as well, because I realized, if I'm using YouTube like I'd use a Snickers bar, for
yeah.
example. It would do the same thing for me. Like I'd watch a video and it's like this little moment of disconnection of I guess endorphin rush or something. It would give me a
Hmm.
little distraction, and I when I noticed that that's all I was using it for. That's all I'm using chocolate for, is distraction. All I'm using YouTube for is distraction, and like a, yeah, it has no value, and I'm not enjoy. I could say that I'm enjoying the content or enjoying the taste, but that's not a good enough reason to be distracted. Because yes, peanut butter ice cream is so delicious, but it's if I'm not eating it for the taste. I think I'm eating it for the taste as much as the the whatever it's doing to my head. So that's an unhealthy relationship that I had to get rid of. So
But
yeah.
it's interesting with this like distraction, because like it implies that there's like a sort of like there's a potential path for you that is more sort of like worthy. Like
Mm.
you could spend your resources on something that you deem more worthy. But like, you know, Snickers and YouTube, they are trying to like take your time away from what you could be doing.
Yeah.
And like in that sense, I think like I might just be more of like a hedonist at heart. Like I I really enjoy those aspects, those like, you know, like frivolous parts of life, you know, like eating ice cream for the sake of the ice cream, not thinking too much about my health. And I
Mm.
was just thinking when you were talking about this, like this perspective that like maybe all of this, like, you know, health consciousness and like mental health consciousness, like when we started off with this, like, you know, realization that we're not as immortal as we might have thought, like are we trying to purchase immortality? Like
Mm-hmm.
is that what's going on? Are we saying, you know, like my body breaks if I don't do all these things?
Yeah.
Like that implies that you can sort of like, you know, make sure it won't break again if you just live right. And I think there might be like a somewhat risky mentality lurking there, right? That you're sort of trying to buy your way into not having to face the reality that your body will break,
Mm-hmm.
like it will fail you eventually, right? Of course, there's a difference between whether it starts breaking down, you know, in your 30s, or whether you can like ride it out into your like 70s or 80s before you have to face those consequences. But like at the same time, like if this becomes like a sort of like overarching thing in your life that you need to make choices that ensure the longevity of like your being, like I feel like there's a risk of, you know, sort of like opting out of all the sort of like taking the scenic route, right? And like just thinking I need to get, you know, the mileage out of this meat machine, like because that's not what it's supposed to be about, right? Like
Mm.
I don't think, I don't know if I would like advocate hedonism. I feel like at this point in my life I haven't really been faced with enough of the consequences to take it off the table,
Yeah.
although I am starting to sort of like, you know, rethink it. But I also feel like, you know, this notion that, you know, like you should, you know, stay away from bad choices because it's gonna have a negative impact on your life. Like I just don't know. Like I feel like that's a very simplified way to look at things. And like I remember my therapist, she pointed out to me that the average age of like the average life expectancy in Lithuania is 1 year over the retirement age.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's like that also says something about like the life in Lithuania generally, because I think it's higher in, at least in Denmark, it's somewhat higher. But
Uh-huh.
like if you spend your whole life saving up for retirement, but on average you can expect to live 1 year after you like after you retire, why are you saving up for like, you know, 25 more years?
Mm.
Like
There's like
is it unreasonable to expect that you're going to live to see 90 years? Like maybe it is, but like obviously you'd rather not run out of money when you're, you know, 67 and then live till 92, right?
mm,
So like, you know, obviously you have the, again it comes back to a trade-off where you want to, you know, live moderately well but also save up enough that you can, you know, to see you out.
mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like there is like it is reasonable to like ask whether we're sort of like a little overzealous with this, like, you know, health, you know, attention. Maybe we also need to like, you know, take it easy and like focus on like enjoying our time here.
It's funny how we've come like completely back, like almost, because that's the idea that I was living with before. Is like I
Mm,
wouldn't say I'm particularly hedonistic into, well, I have been. Let's say smoking was a hedonistic habit, but yeah,
yeah.
not overly, but just ignoring my body and just being comfortable all the time, or most of the time, or when I wanted to be comfortable. Let's say that's a kind of hedonism in itself, but it's of course the other way, um, living completely conscious and doing the most healthy choice all the time is kind of living in another fear itself.
Like actually, I'm surprised that this conversation has seemed like simultaneously very sort of like coherent, but also we've gotten around like an array of like only slightly related topics.
Yeah.
So I'm very positively surprised. I really enjoyed that about your conversation with Kent, that it seemed so like it seemed to flow so naturally from topic to topic, and like you were sort of like going around everything from like music and creativity to God and politics and like American like presidential like bullshit, and like it all just seemed so like so natural and so seamless. And like I really enjoyed that. And I feel like that's sort of like that's the big benefit of this format of like two dudes talking long format conversation. Like if we were to do like a 20-minute conversation, we would need like a concise topic and just like have sort of like pre-written talking points and like make
Mhm.
sure you hit them and then wrap it up. But this sort of like it can like become rambling. I think that's the big risk of it.
Mhm.
But it can also really allow for this like organic conversation and just like taking the time to expand on your own thoughts and like taking in your like conversation partners like points and like all that. I feel like it like in that episode that seemed to work really well.
Mm.
um
That's great. It's lovely to like. It would be a strange thought to have like, yeah, talking points and questions, and um, that's just not how, yeah, our conversations or natural conversation seems to happen. And it's so nice to be sitting here
yeah.
having a conversation, not knowing where it's going, and then you sort of come out the other side of it, at least with the others, and you're like, wow, yeah, we kind of covered some ground here. And that wouldn't happen if you had a, a specific question. And it's nice to open up to where you are now as well. Like, oh, we're talking about health because health
Yeah.
is on our minds right now. And then, yeah, in that way, it's kind of more a healthy conversation. It's like, it's like when you have therapy, you talk about kind of where you are now. You don't you talk about where you are 6 months ago. Probably it's always about the moment.
Yeah.
That's why it's yeah, so good. I'm glad. And it's kind of nice that we had this flow as well, because every time I press record, there's a little moment of like have to get over the fact that this is being captured, and then I can.
Yeah.
Comes a point where I forget about all of this, and that's beautiful. And then I realize, oh, we're just having a chat like we would anywhere else, and that's a nice thing. I think we got to that place, so that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a balance to be struck between feeling natural and not allowing the conversation to sort of like, stall and die or whatever, like
Or get
losing
personal, yeah.
losing attention or like whatever it is.
Hmm.
Um but yeah, I think it's been this has been a very good experience. Barring like apart from the technical sort of like, um hiccups.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like you suggested, we might pick it up at a later point, either on a different platform or potentially face to face,
Mm.
if circumstances allow. But I think that for now this is there's definitely some you know meat to 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 work with here, and like we'll see if there's going to be more, like if it's worth actually sort of like putting up, and otherwise we can always just you know have another conversation about something else.
It's a strange idea Kent and I touched on this. I don't know if it was in the final edit that came together, but the idea of like, why would our conversation, why should we share this conversation? Like that seems quite egotistical. Our ideas are so great, they should be shared. And
Mm,
but actually, I never think of that when I listen to other people's podcasts. I'm just kind of like
yeah.
glad that it's like creating anything. You know, if you think about why you're doing it too much, then it kind of stalls the whole process. But I in just enjoy, just first of all, like we're saying, just enjoy the process and enjoy the connection and the conversation. And then the weird thing
Yeah.
is other people do as well. That's weird to me, but it's really lovely that people just they connect to it. And there there is some meat here. I think, you know, now I'm being a bit more objective, kind of like part of me is going, oh, we talked about this, and I'm sort of imagining people listening to it now, or at least imagining if I was listening to this, like in that third person way,
Yeah.
getting above my own self here, like talking about injury and talking about kind of this drive towards getting away from hedonism or embracing hedonism, that balance in between. That's
Yeah.
something that everyone goes through, and it's kind of, I think it's nice to just express something that people hopefully going to relate to that. And
Yeah. I mean, some people will, right?
some people
Like,
might, yeah.
I don't think it needs to appeal to everybody, right? Like, I don't think the thoughts that we have and share need to be universally recognizable. Like, I feel like you're making some points that are interesting to me, and there's no reason for me to believe that I'm the only person to whom they would be interesting.
Hmm.
So, like, and as long as it's, you're not, like selling, as we would say in Danish, you're not selling the cat in the bag. Like, you know, eh, nobody's getting tricked, right?
Yeah,
If we're making this and putting it out there and nobody cares, we still had a good conversation. Like it's just it like everything beyond the conversation itself is just added value, right? And
yeah,
like we talked about, like the process of editing a podcast and like publishing it on like on your website or on YouTube or wherever you put it, that's also like, that's an activity that you hopefully enjoy for what it's worth. Like I know that editing can be like one of the more tedious aspects of it, but
hmm,
like it's also like a learning curve, and it has its, like its benefits of actually getting better at it.
yeah,
So like there are a lot of benefits that are like on a personal level, but there's still benefits.
mm,
So like it's not like, if nobody's listening, this conversation was never even worthwhile.
yeah,
you know like it's no skin off your nose to like just put it out and like
yeah, yeah,
see where it goes. It's like I understand that feeling of like, is it pretentious? Like what if people think I'm a dick because I share a conversation with another person? But then, you know take a risk.
take a
Let them
risk.
think you're like, the people who might think you're a dick for like having a conversation and then sharing it, are they the people you need in your life?
Yeah.
Probably not. Like you could probably do without them. Let them think you're a dick and then go about their business.
It's very easy to not listen to it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's very easy to just scroll on by, and it's fine. That's
Exactly.
I'd do it
Yeah.
myself probably. But that's the thing. It just gives another. It's, yeah, I'm not even thinking now about the next bit. It's like, yeah, this moment, and it's nice to get past that membrane of like, oh, I've pressed record, and then I don't know, I've even lost track of time. I remember in our first episode, I'm looking at the clock, like, has it been long enough?
Mm,
Is it too long?
yeah.
And now I'm like, yeah, it's a nice thing to do have a few of these connections conversation, and realize that the process itself is becoming more enjoyable and natural and just
Yeah.
in the moment. And so yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And it definitely comes back to that point that you shouldn't be doing this with the end goal of like creating a successful podcast in mind.
no,
Like that's not how this becomes like a worthwhile endeavor. It
mm,
becomes worthwhile if every step of it is enjoyable. And if it
exactly,
stops being enjoyable before it becomes successful, then, stop. You don't
Yeah.
need success at the price of tedium, right? Like, so just keep going while it's fun, and if it if it picks up while it's fun, great. If it stops being fun before it gets popular, then it was fun while it lasted. Like that seems like the obvious way to do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm sure that like hundreds of thousands of people have done this before and
Oh,
not gotten anywhere with it. But like I'm sure that none of the ones that got successful did it through, not enjoying it in the first place.
yeah.
So,
Well, it's already a success. So
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Thanks for sharing it, man. Thanks for being
Oh,
here.
of course.
Making
Yeah,
it that
thank
way.
you for having me.